What would you do if the camera you trusted to keep your children safe showed you something that broke your world? If this is your first time on Top Core, hit subscribe now. You won't want to miss stories that make you look at people differently. I remember the Reeves house the first time I drove by. Big oaks in the yard, a white columned porch, a mailbox with the family name stamped like a declaration. Here lived a life most people work toward. Daniel Reeves was proud. He had built a career from late nights and deals, and he liked the feeling of control money bought. It showed in the marble, the perfect lawn, the order of things. He called it safety. In private, he called it a fortress. He had 2 kids, Carter, 6, who could take apart a toy truck and put it back together before your coffee cooled, and Ellie, 4, with a laugh that made the old dog jump. People who saw them said the kids were perfect. Daniel liked that. He believed a good father sees threats early, and he liked machines that let him see farther than other people could. When Melissa pushed to hire help, Daniel agreed. They needed time. Melissa had more dinners and events than Daniel could track. She called it work. He called it distance. Grace Mwangi arrived with a small suitcase and a soft voice. She had references, steady work history, and a way with kids that felt honest. You could watch her across a room and know she cared. In the small ways that matter, wiping a tear, braiding hair, sitting on the floor while they scattered toys. Daniel noticed that, sometimes too clearly. Ellie followed Grace like a small shadow. Carter offered her the first cookie. Grace prayed quietly at night, pausing at the nursery door to whisper and touch the children's foreheads. It was private enough Daniel couldn't decide whether to be grateful or jealous. He told himself grateful. Fear has a way of growing. It begins small, and then you spend hours worrying you missed something. For Daniel, worry slid into control, and control called for cameras. He hired a high-end system, hidden lenses in smoke detectors, a tiny eye in the corner of the nursery, a discreet camera above the playroom door. He told the company the usual line, peace of mind. He told Melissa later, after the fact, that it was just for safety. At first, he watched like a cautious parent. Mornings with coffee, logging in while the kids ate. He saw Grace walk through the house, light on her feet, whispering silly sounds for a giggle. She folded laundry, read books, tied shoelaces. The footage calmed him. Then one night it did the opposite. It was late, a little after 11. The house hummed. Melissa was out, Daniel at a fundraiser. The nursery camera picked up movement. Grace stepped into frame holding a small worn book. She knelt by the beds and her voice softened. She prayed. The words were foreign to Daniel, a rhythm he didn't know. She closed the book and kissed the children's foreheads like sealing a promise. On the monitor she said something Daniel couldn't place. He rewound the footage. He watched twice. The words echoed. He felt watched by the recording, like the camera had become a witness to something more than bedtime routines. He asked himself why she prayed for the house to be kept from harm. That private question nudged at the life Daniel had built. He had always protected. He wasn't used to needing protection. The next night, she did it again. At 11:42, same book, same whisper, and this time his camera caught a wetness at her eyes. "Open his eyes, Lord," she whispered. "Don't let his heart turn cold." Daniel stared until the clock numbers blurred. Was she praying for him? For Melissa? For something he didn't understand? He felt annoyance, suspicion, and the first stir of an emotion he didn't like to name. Anger. The footage lined up like small accusations. Daniel watched more than he should. He checked from his office at dusk, from his phone at lunch, and he noticed things he'd missed before. A shadow sometimes running along the fence, a dark shape at the rear of the property. Grace told him one afternoon she'd seen a man near the yard. She had held the children close. Then the night Daniel crossed the line. He walked into the nursery unannounced while the kids slept and found them in a tangled heap of blankets. Ellie sucked her thumb, safe. Grace sat by the crib with a blanket over her knees, head bowed. When she saw him, she flinched. "Mr. Reeves," she murmured. There was someone near the back fence. He didn't ask calm questions. He asked about the prayers and why she was there. That was the moment the world tilted. He left with a weight in his chest that felt like a verdict. What he'd see on the monitor in the morning, what proof he might find, would either make him apologize or double down. He chose cameras over conversation, caution over confession, and in that choice, a small kindness began to die. He stops, trembling. The chapter closes on Daniel hitting play the next morning, his hand trembling. On the screen, the nursery is still, and something moves in the corner of the frame that will change everything. When a secret shows itself, it lands like a stone. Daniel replayed footage until his eyes burned. He clicked through files, then paused on a night he had not expected to open. It was the evening Melissa said she had a charity event. He watched his wife in the kitchen with a man he did not know. They moved close. A quick kiss at the sink. The camera, angled from the hall, caught everything. Whispered words, a hand on a back, a glance toward the nursery window. The footage narrowed his world. All the neat lists he kept, the plans and alarms, fell away. He felt foolish for missing it, furious at the image of his wife laughing like she belonged in a life he had not offered. He replayed the scene until the frames looked bleached. He didn't explode at her in public. He waited until she came home. He left the laptop open on the coffee table so the image waited like evidence. When Melissa saw it, she went cold. "Daniel," she said, and then a hardness came over her face. "You invaded my privacy." "It looks like you brought a man into our house while our children slept," he said. Grace walked in with Ellie, then stopped when she saw the screen. Melissa snapped. "You watch us too closely," she spat. "You think I need a nanny to be a mother?" Grace's voice did not shake. "I saw someone near the fence the other night. I kept them away from the window. I locked the door. I will do what I can to keep them safe." Daniel's anger settled like concrete. He listened neither to his better sense nor to the way his own chest hurt. "You're fired," he said. Grace gathered a small bag and a child's crayon drawing. Ellie reached for her and Grace lifted her up, holding the child a second longer. The sight split Daniel in a way a file on a screen could not. He had chosen cameras over conversation, and in that choosing he'd hurt someone who had been good. The house felt hollow after she left. He convinced himself he had done the right thing, until a guilt-like weather rolled over him and he drove to find her. Her apartment was modest, a pot simmering on the stove, toys in the corner, a photo taped to the wall. When Grace opened the door, she looked like any tired mother. She did not slam it shut. She let him in. "I watched the footage," he said, clumsy with regret. "I saw Melissa. I was wrong to blame you." Grace listened. She told him she had locked the children away that night because someone had been watching the house from the yard. "I kept them inside," she said. "I prayed with them and waited until he left." Daniel felt smaller with each sentence. "I judged you," he said. "I'm sorry." Grace took a breath and then offered him something he had not expected. "The children need someone to stay with them. If you want me to stay, not just as help but as family, I will." He tried to respond like a man who deserved second chances. He mangled the words and finally asked her to remain. She agreed, though her eyes held a distance he didn't want to probe. Time passed. The house recovered some of its warmth. Daniel paid back withheld wages and tried to be a better father. He began to see his life through the bluntness of what he'd lost and what he'd almost lost. He spoke less about control and more about care. Then the envelopes started. Plain. No return address, with one line printed inside, "You should have checked again." He opened the next archive on the server and found a clip he'd never watched. It was darker than the others, a low-resolution frame taken from a different angle. In the grain, he saw Grace on the inside, and a figure outside near the window. She whispered something across the glass. "Everything went as planned," she said. A voice answered from the dark. "He believes me now." Daniel's hands trembled. The neat story he'd been making, of a wife who had walked away and a maid who defended the children, grew ragged at the edges. The line between protector and planner had blurred until he couldn't tell which was which. The tools he'd placed to make him safe now showed him a life that was not whole. He sat back and tried to name what he felt. Betrayal, fear, relief, and a small hot shame. He had watched so much that watching now felt like an accusation against himself. He had judged a woman who had kept his children safe, and he had allowed his doubts to harden into punishment. Outside, a neighbor's radio buzzed with a morning show host discussing security cameras and privacy. Inside, Daniel closed the laptop and then opened it again. unable to stop looking for the detail that would make sense of the whisper, the shadow, the promise. He wished for a single frame that explained everything. That night, an envelope slid beneath his door. Only 3 typed words. Check the window. Daniel's skin went cold. He clicked the clip again, eyes straining. In the low hiss of the recording, something like a soft laugh threaded through. A sound that didn't belong to any of them. Then, he hit pause and felt the screen's glow like a pulse under his skin. The house around him breathed and moved, but Daniel could not shake the question the footage left him with. Who exactly was he protecting, and from whom? What if the danger you've been watching for has been inside your house all along? Daniel didn't sleep that night. He sat in the dim light of his office, the blue screen glow cutting across his face. The same footage played again and again. Grace's whisper, the shadow at the window, the voice that answered. He believes me now. Those words looped in his head like a curse.
He wanted to call the police, but what would he tell them? That he'd installed hidden cameras and caught his maid talking to someone outside the window. Maybe a ghost, maybe an intruder, maybe nothing at all? It sounded insane. By dawn, the world outside his window looked deceptively normal. Birds, sprinklers, neighbors jogging. But Daniel felt the thin fabric of his reality tearing. At breakfast, Carter and Ellie giggled over pancakes. Grace moved around the kitchen as if nothing had happened. Same gentle voice, same calm eyes. But Daniel couldn't look at her the same. He kept seeing that moment on camera, her lips moving in the dark. He had questions. Too many. But he held them in. He needed proof first. So he went upstairs, opened the security app, and added 2 more hidden cameras. One in the kitchen, another facing the back door. He wasn't going to be blindsided again. That night, he watched from his office as Grace tucked the kids into bed. Her every move seemed rehearsed now, the way she straightened the blanket, the soft hum of a lullaby, the small smile before she turned off the light. Everything looked deliberate. Too perfect. Around midnight, movement again. The backyard camera flickered. The motion sensor triggered. A man's shape appeared near the edge of the property. Daniel zoomed in, heart pounding. He could barely make out a face, but something about the posture, the way the figure moved, felt familiar. Then Grace appeared. She stepped into the yard barefoot, wearing a long robe, her phone light dimmed to a glow. Daniel leaned in closer, pulse racing. She whispered to the man, the same voice from before. This time, Daniel heard a name. Marcus. The man reached into his coat and handed her something. Small, metallic, shining faintly under the moonlight. Grace pocketed it quickly and hurried back inside. Daniel froze. Every instinct screamed that something was wrong. He jumped up from his desk and stormed down the hallway. By the time he reached the kitchen, she was gone. Only the back door swinging softly in the draft. He checked the locks, the curtains, every corner of the house. Then he found it. Under the edge of the rug near the pantry was a small flash drive. He plugged it into his laptop and waited. It contained one video, grainy, time-stamped 3 months ago, showing Grace kneeling beside his wife, Melissa, who looked pale, weak, almost frightened. The audio was muffled, but Daniel could make out fragments. Melissa, please, he can't know yet. Grace, he won't, but you need to tell him the truth. Melissa, if he finds out about... The clip cut off. Daniel stared at the screen, shaking. What truth? What was his wife hiding? And why did Grace have this recording? He heard footsteps behind him. Grace stood at the doorframe, calm as ever. You shouldn't be watching that, Mr. Reeves, she said softly. Daniel turned. What is this? Why do you have footage of my wife? Grace's expression hardened for the first time since he'd met her. Because she trusted me, more than she trusted you. Her words hit him like a slap. Before he could speak again, she turned and walked away, leaving Daniel with the sound of his own breath and the growing certainty that his home was not the safe haven he'd imagined. And when he turned back to the laptop, the screen had gone black. The footage was gone. By morning, the house had changed. It looked the same. Sunlight across the floor, kids laughing in the distance. But the air carried tension, like the walls were holding secrets. Daniel drove to the security company, demanding copies of all the recordings. The technician blinked at him, confused. "Sir," he said, "those files were remotely deleted last night. Someone with admin access cleared them." "Admin access?" Daniel snapped. "That's me. Or anyone who has your login credentials," the tech replied. Daniel's stomach turned. Who else had them? He drove home, hands trembling on the wheel. He went straight to Grace's room. Her suitcase was still there, half-packed. Clothes folded neatly. Nothing looked stolen. But on the desk was a small photo of Grace with 2 children, not his. Younger, darker-skinned, smiling through the camera like they knew something he didn't. And under the photo, a folded note. He unfolded it carefully. Sometimes protection looks like betrayal. What you think you see isn't always the truth. Watch the old footage. The night before Melissa's fall. Daniel's pulse thundered. Melissa's fall. She had fallen down the stairs weeks before she left the house, bruised, shaken, claiming she'd slipped. The memory was still raw. He opened his backup drive, scrolled through old files, and found the date. The footage began as usual. Melissa carrying laundry up the stairs. Then behind her, Grace followed. The moment looked harmless. But halfway up, Melissa turned sharply, shouting something Daniel couldn't hear. Grace reached for her arm, maybe to stop her, maybe not. And Melissa lost balance, tumbling backward down the steps. Daniel gasped. Grace ran down, panic on her face. She cradled Melissa, crying out, "Stay with me! Stay with me!" Then she pulled out her phone and called 911. Daniel's hands shook so violently he almost dropped the laptop. He'd spent months thinking Grace was flawless, a saint, and then weeks thinking she was a liar. Now he didn't know what to believe. When Melissa woke from that fall, she'd refused to talk about it. She'd said it was an accident, but Daniel could see now. There was something more. The door creaked. Grace stood there again. "Did you watch it?" she asked. Daniel swallowed hard. "I did. What really happened that night?" Grace's eyes welled up. "She wanted to leave you. She wanted to tell you the truth about something that could destroy your family. I tried to stop her, not to hurt her, but to stop her from running out in the rain. She slipped." Daniel stared, lost for words. "What truth?" Grace hesitated, then stepped closer. "One of your children isn't yours." The world around Daniel seemed to collapse. He stumbled back, the air leaving his lungs. "What are you talking about?" Grace looked at him with pity. "Melissa told me everything before she left. That's why she brought me into your home, to protect the kids when it came out." He shook his head, refusing to believe it. "You're lying." "Then do what you do best," she said quietly. "Check the cameras." And before Daniel could stop her, Grace turned and walked out the door, leaving him with nothing but questions, a broken trust, and the eerie feeling that every truth he'd built his life on was about to crumble. He opened the camera feed again, eyes locked on the screen. Then he saw it, a live feed from the backyard. Someone was standing there, the same man from before, and this time, he wasn't alone. Daniel couldn't remember the last time he had felt so uneasy in his own home. The quiet hum of the security monitors filled his office, the screens reflecting off his tense expression. He had installed those cameras to feel safer, to know his children were okay when he couldn't be around. But lately, the footage had started to feel more like a confession booth than a safety precaution. That night, it was raining, a low, steady drizzle that tapped against the window like a warning. Daniel sat there with a glass of whiskey, replaying footage from the previous night. Grace, the maid, was tucking the kids into bed, her voice soft and melodic as she said a prayer. "Lord, watch over this home and heal what's broken inside it." Daniel leaned closer. That line, "heal what's broken inside it," hit him like a whisper meant for him. He rewound it. Listened again. Her tone carried weight, like she knew something he didn't. He felt an unfamiliar chill slide down his spine. He switched to another camera feed, the one from the living room. Midnight. Grace walked in quietly, barefoot, holding a small Bible. She knelt by the couch, whispering something Daniel couldn't make out. Then suddenly, her body tensed. She turned her head toward the stairs as if she heard something. Daniel paused the footage, zoomed in. There, in the reflection of the glass door behind her, a shadow. A tall figure, watching from outside. His breath caught. He replayed the moment over and over, but each time the figure disappeared just before he could make out a face. He checked the next camera feed. The backyard. At exactly 11:47 p.m., motion detection activated, but when the screen lit up, the figure was gone. Daniel ran his hand over his face. His heart raced. Could Grace have been telling the truth? He wanted to call the police, but something inside him stopped. What if this was some setup? What if Grace had someone helping her create fear so she could manipulate him? He felt torn between logic and paranoia. The next morning, he asked Grace directly, "Did you see anything strange last night?" Her eyes flickered with fear. "Yes, sir. Near the fence again. The same man." "Describe him," Daniel pressed. She hesitated. "I couldn't see his face, but he moved like someone who knew this place." Her words sank into him. Knew this place. Later that day, while checking another camera angle from the garage, Daniel noticed something else. A second car in the reflection of the security mirror. A dark sedan parked half hidden behind the trees. He didn't own that car. He zoomed in and saw a small pendant hanging from the rearview mirror. A golden heart. He had seen that pendant before. It belonged to Melissa. Daniel froze. His pulse roared in his ears. He slammed the laptop shut, chest tight with dread. His wife wasn't supposed to be home last night. She'd told him she was at a charity gala in Savannah. So why was her car there, parked behind the house in the dark? He sat in silence, his entire world tilting. Everything he had believed about Grace, about Melissa, about control, it all started to blur. The next night, Daniel didn't sleep. He waited in the living room with the monitors on. Midnight came. The rain returned. At 12:03 a.m., Grace appeared again on the footage, heading toward the children's room, clutching that same Bible. And then, movement near the back fence. A shadow again. Taller this time. Closer. Daniel's chest tightened as he saw Grace freeze mid-prayer, looking directly toward the camera. She wasn't looking at the kids. She was looking at him, as if she knew he was watching. And then she whispered, "You need to see the truth before it destroys you." The lights flickered. The footage cut to static. Daniel leaped from his chair, heart pounding. When the screens came back, Grace and the kids were gone. The house was silent. Too silent. He ran upstairs. Their beds were empty. He turned toward the hall, and there, standing by the door, was Grace, holding both children close. Her eyes were wide, her voice trembling. "Mr. Reeves," she whispered. "Someone's inside." Daniel's pulse thundered as he rushed to the foyer, checking every door and window. Nothing looked broken, nothing seemed disturbed. Yet the air felt charged, heavy, like the house itself was holding its breath. "Take the kids upstairs," he said sharply. "Lock the door." Grace obeyed without a word. Her face was pale, but her movements were steady, protective. She gathered Carter and Ellie, whispering to them softly as they disappeared upstairs. Daniel grabbed the nearest thing that could work as a weapon, a fireplace poker, and started through the house. Every creak of the floorboard sounded like footsteps. Every shadow looked alive. He checked the kitchen first. The back door latch was undone. His heart pounded harder. He swung it open. Nothing, just rain hitting the deck. He closed it again and turned around. And there it was, a muddy footprint on the floor. He followed it slowly. It led toward the hallway, toward his office. When he opened the door, everything looked normal at first, until he noticed one detail. His laptop was open, and the footage was playing. Except this wasn't footage from the cameras. It was from a hidden feed he didn't install. The video showed Grace tucking the kids into bed, then whispering into the camera. He's watching, but not seeing. He's hearing, but not listening. Then, a voice behind her said quietly, "He'll know soon enough." Daniel froze. That voice, it wasn't Grace's. It was Melissa's. His stomach dropped. He scrubbed through the footage. There was more. Another night. Grace and Melissa together in the living room, talking in hushed tones. "She doesn't deserve what's coming," Grace whispered. "Neither do my children," Melissa replied coldly. "Just keep doing your part." Daniel's hands trembled. He heard a noise behind him, the faint creak of a step. He spun around, poker raised, but no one was there. Then, faintly, from upstairs, Ellie screamed. He dropped the poker and bolted up the stairs. Grace was standing by the children's room door, clutching Ellie tight. "She saw something," Grace gasped. "A man outside the window." Daniel ran to the window, but when he looked out, there was no one. Just darkness and the reflection of his own terrified face. But then, he saw it. In the reflection, behind him, a figure standing in the hallway. He turned sharply, swinging the window open light, but no one was there. Grace whispered, "You can't trust the cameras anymore, Mr. Reeves. Someone's using them against you." Daniel's voice cracked. "What are you talking about?" She looked down, her eyes wet. "Your wife, she wasn't working alone." Daniel stared at her, his heart racing. "Then who was she working with?" Grace's lips trembled as she whispered the last name he expected to hear. "Your business partner." And before Daniel could process it, the lights went out, the house went black, and somewhere downstairs, a door creaked open. The house was swallowed by darkness. Daniel could hear his own heartbeat, heavy and loud, as thunder rolled across the night sky. He grabbed his phone, but the screen flickered, no signal. Grace held the kids close in the corner, whispering prayers under her breath. "Lord, keep them hidden, keep them unseen." Daniel moved cautiously toward the stairs. Each step creaked louder than he wanted it to. The power outage wasn't random. He could feel that in his gut. Someone had cut it. At the bottom of the stairs, faint light spilled in from the slightly open back door. The rain had slowed, but the wind howled like a warning. He reached the door and pushed it open, poker still tight in his hand. And there he was, a man standing just beyond the deck, wearing a black raincoat, face half hidden beneath the hood. Daniel raised his voice. "Who are you?" The man didn't move, didn't speak. Then, a crack of lightning. For a split second, the flash revealed his face. Daniel's grip went slack. It was Ethan Cole, his business partner. "Ethan?" Daniel shouted, stepping outside. "What the hell are you doing here?" Ethan smirked faintly. "Making sure you finally see what's been happening right under your nose." Daniel's jaw clenched. "What are you talking about?" Ethan stepped forward, his tone icy. "You built everything we have on lies, Daniel. Every deal, every contract. You used people like they were chess pieces. And now the board's flipping on you." Daniel's confusion shifted to anger. "You think this is about business? My wife's missing, my kids are terrified, and you're standing here talking about contracts." Ethan's smirk vanished. "Your wife wasn't missing. She was protecting them from you." Daniel froze. "What?" Ethan took another step closer, rain dripping from his coat. "Melissa knew what you were doing. The offshore accounts, the money laundering, the charities that weren't real. She was trying to save your kids from the storm you created." Daniel's voice cracked with rage. "That's a damn lie." But even as he said it, he felt a flicker of doubt. There were things, buried things, he didn't want to remember. Ethan stared at him, calm and cold. "You can call me a liar all you want, but the truth doesn't care who you are anymore. It's coming, Daniel." Suddenly, a light flickered behind them, from inside the house. Grace was standing at the window, holding a phone, her face pale. Ethan turned and muttered, "She knows too." Daniel's head snapped toward him. "What did you just say?" Before Ethan could answer, a loud crash echoed from the side of the house, glass shattering. Daniel turned instinctively, but when he looked back, Ethan was gone, vanished into the dark rain. He ran back inside, shouting, "Grace, lock the doors!" Grace rushed to the foyer, holding the kids tight. "Who was that?" Daniel's voice shook. "My partner." Her eyes widened. "Then it's true." He frowned. "What's true?" Grace hesitated, then whispered, "He said you were the reason Melissa ran, that you made enemies who don't forgive." Daniel's chest tightened. "What enemies?" But before Grace could answer, Ellie screamed again, not from fear this time, but from shock. She pointed toward the stairs, and there, standing halfway up, was Melissa, soaking wet, pale, eyes empty. "Danny," she whispered, "you should have listened." Daniel's knees almost buckled. "Melissa?" She stood motionless, dripping rainwater onto the steps. Her face was ghostly pale, her lips trembling. Grace clutched the children tighter, whispering, "It's okay, baby, it's okay." But her voice broke halfway through. Melissa's gaze locked on Daniel. "You watched the cameras, didn't you?" He hesitated. "Yes, I saw things I can't explain." She nodded weakly. "Then you know the truth." Daniel's voice hardened. "No, I know lies. I saw you with Ethan. I saw you sneaking around my house when you were supposed to be out of town." Tears welled in her eyes. "Because I couldn't tell you. You would have never believed me." "Believed what?" he demanded. Melissa's hand trembled as she reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a folded document, soaked, edges torn. It's everything they were hiding from you. The bank transfers, the offshore accounts, the fake donors. Ethan forged your signature, Daniel. You were the fall guy." He took a step closer, but she backed away. "You think I didn't try to fix it?" she cried. "I went to the authorities, but before they could move, Ethan found out. He sent people here. That's why Grace came. She wasn't our maid. She was sent by someone I trusted to keep the kids safe." Grace's eyes filled with tears. "I couldn't tell you, sir. If Ethan knew, he'd have killed all of us." Daniel's mind spun. None of it made sense, yet every piece fit too perfectly to ignore. "Melissa," he said slowly, "if that's true, why didn't you come to me sooner?" Her voice broke. "Because I didn't trust who you'd become." Those words hit him like a knife. He stared at her, the woman who had once been his anchor, and felt his chest tighten. Lightning flashed again outside, followed by a deafening crack of thunder. For a moment, the entire house flickered with light, and Daniel saw movement through the front window. A car, headlights cutting through the rain. Melissa's eyes widened. "They found us." Daniel rushed to the window. A black SUV was pulling into the driveway, the same model Ethan drove. Grace grabbed the kids and ran toward the back. "There's a crawl space under the pantry. We can hide there." Daniel turned to Melissa. "Go with them." She shook her head. "Not without you." But Daniel pushed her toward Grace. "Take them. Go." He grabbed the poker again, adrenaline surging. The front door rattled. Then came the first pound. "Daniel Reeves!" a voice shouted from outside. "Step out, and we'll talk like men." It was Ethan. Daniel positioned himself near the corner of the hallway, heart racing, whispering to himself, "Talk? No, you're not here to talk." Another slam shook the door. The lock gave way. The door burst open, and Ethan stepped in with two men behind him. Daniel lunged forward, swinging the poker. It struck one of the men across the shoulder. He fell with a grunt. Ethan pulled a gun, shouting, "Stop! Don't make this worse." Daniel froze. "Put it down," Ethan warned. "You're not the victim here, Danny. You're the cover-up." Melissa's voice came from behind Ethan. "You're lying." He turned, surprised. Melissa had come back, holding the camera phone, recording everything. "You wanted this, right?" she said, her voice steady. "A confession on record." Ethan raised the gun toward her. "Turn it off." But she didn't. She kept it aimed at him even as tears rolled down her face. "Say it, Ethan," she whispered. "Tell the truth before you pull that trigger." Ethan's expression darkened. "Fine." He took one step closer, gun aimed between her eyes. "The truth is, your husband built this empire on lies. I just made sure it burned faster." Then a deafening bang split the air. Melissa screamed. Daniel dove, tackling Ethan just as the shot fired. The gun slid across the floor. They struggled, fists and fury colliding in the dark. A lamp shattered, a chair fell. The children's cries echoed from somewhere behind the wall. Finally, Daniel slammed Ethan against the staircase, panting, eyes wild. "Why?" he shouted. "Why destroy everything we built?" Ethan spat blood, grinning. "Because you never built it for us. You built it for yourself." And then, sirens. Distant at first, then louder. Melissa still held the phone, trembling, whispering into it. "It's all recorded, everything." Daniel turned toward her, relief in his eyes, but Ethan's hand was already reaching for the fallen gun. Grace screamed, "Daniel!" He turned, too late. The gun went off again, and everything went black. The sound of the gunshot hung in the air like thunder refusing to die. For a moment, everything stopped. The rain outside, the cries from the crawlspace. Even time seemed to hold its breath. Daniel lay still on the hardwood floor, his white shirt spreading dark with blood. The poker rolled from his hand, clinking once, twice, then falling silent. Melissa dropped to her knees beside him. "Daniel! No! No! No!" Her voice broke, trembling as her hands pressed against his chest. "Stay with me, please!" Grace rushed out from hiding, clutching the kids close. The little boy's eyes were wide and wet. "Mommy, is Daddy hurt?" Melissa couldn't answer. Ethan stood frozen by the staircase, his chest rising and falling fast, the gun still in his shaking hand. "Drop it!" Grace shouted, her voice sharp and desperate. But Ethan didn't move. He just looked down at Daniel, his oldest friend, lying there bleeding because of everything that had gone wrong. Sirens wailed closer now, blue and red lights flickering through the rain-streaked windows. Ethan slowly raised his hands and whispered, "I didn't mean to. I swear to God, I didn't mean to." Melissa's eyes were full of fire and grief. "You destroyed our lives, Ethan." He looked at her, empty, haunted. "You think I wanted this? You think I planned to?" Before he could finish, a shadow appeared behind him. One of his own men, clutching his shoulder wound from earlier. "Boss, we gotta go," the man hissed, panicked. "Cops are here." Ethan glanced back at Daniel, who coughed weakly, blood pooling at his lips. "Don't let him—" Daniel tried to speak, but Melissa held him tighter, whispering, "Save your strength." Ethan's eyes flickered with guilt. He backed away slowly. "I'll turn myself in. I just can't do it tonight." "Ethan!" Melissa screamed. But he was already gone, slipping into the storm as police sirens screamed down the hill. Grace ran to the front door and threw it open, waving frantically. "In here, hurry!" Officers stormed the foyer. "Drop the weapon!" one shouted, aiming at Melissa. But she quickly raised her hands. "It's on the floor. Please help him." They rushed to Daniel, radios crackling. One of the medics dropped beside him, checking for a pulse. "He's alive," the medic said, voice firm. "Barely." Melissa let out a sob of relief, her forehead against Daniel's hand. "Thank you, God. Thank you." The police swept the rooms, clearing each corner, but Ethan was long gone. Only the echo of his betrayal remained, a sound louder than the gunshot itself. As the ambulance pulled away, Grace stood in the doorway, soaked by rain, holding the children close. The little girl whispered, "Is Daddy gonna die?" Grace looked toward the flashing red lights disappearing down the road. "I don't know, baby, but I know one thing. The truth's not done with us yet." Then she turned back toward the house, where the cameras Daniel had installed still blinked faintly red, recording everything, watching everyone, even now. 3 days later, the world knew. News reporters stood outside Mercy General Hospital. Cameras rolled as headlines screamed, "Billionaire developer caught in secret scandal, partner on the run." Hidden cameras reveal family betrayal and corporate crime. Inside room 203, the hospital smelled of antiseptic and heartbreak. Daniel lay unconscious, tubes running from his arms. Melissa sat by his bed, motionless, the glow of her phone reflecting off tear-stained cheeks. The video she'd recorded, Ethan's confession, had gone viral. But the comments weren't kind. Some called her a liar, others called her brave, and a few just asked the question that haunted her most. How could a man like Daniel not know what was happening under his own roof? Grace entered quietly, carrying a cup of coffee. "You haven't slept in 2 nights." Melissa shook her head. "Every time I close my eyes, I see him fall." Grace set the cup down and sighed. "He's strong. He'll wake up." Melissa looked at her, exhausted, raw. "If he does, what then? He's broke. His name's ruined. The company's gone." Grace leaned against the wall, thoughtful. Maybe that's what he needed, to lose everything, so he could finally see what matters. Melissa stared at Daniel's still face. "And what if I can't forgive him?" Grace's voice softened. "Then forgive yourself first." Silence filled the room, heavy but peaceful. Then the monitor beeped. Once. Twice. Daniel's fingers twitched. Melissa gasped, standing quickly. "Daniel?" His eyes fluttered open, hazy and confused. His voice cracked. Where am I?" She rushed to his side. "You're in the hospital. You were shot, but you're safe now." He blinked slowly. "The kids, they're fine," she said, tears falling freely. Grace kept them safe. He exhaled shakily, eyes filling. "Ethan?" Melissa swallowed hard. "He's gone, but the truth's out." Daniel turned his head toward the window. Outside, reporters still flashed cameras through the rain. Maybe that's all that's left now, the truth. Melissa took his hand. "It's enough." He looked at her, guilt heavy in his eyes. "I should have trusted you. I should have seen what I was turning into." She squeezed his hand tighter. "Then start over, not as the man who built empires, but as the man who almost lost his soul and found it again." He nodded slowly, tears mixing with relief. For the first time in months, Daniel Reeves felt the weight of his own heart, and the mercy that still lived there. But as peace settled over the room, Grace stepped closer, her phone buzzing. She glanced at the screen and froze. Melissa noticed her expression. "What is it?" Grace's hand trembled as she showed her the phone. A notification. From one of the cameras in the house. It read, "New footage uploaded. 2 hours ago." Melissa's voice went cold. "That's impossible. The cameras were shut down." Grace whispered, "Someone turned them back on." Melissa's eyes darted toward the hospital window, toward the gray street below. And there, across the road, stood a black SUV. Ethan Cole was sitting inside, watching, smiling. The rain had slowed, but the tension hadn't. Charleston's hospital parking lot gleamed under streetlights, puddles like mirrors reflecting a world Daniel wished he could erase. He sat upright in bed now, still weak, a bandage wrapping his chest. Melissa stood by the window, clutching the phone Grace had shown her. "You're sure this isn't old footage?" she whispered. Grace nodded. "Timestamp's fresh. 2 hours ago. Same living room angle. The cameras are back online." Daniel's throat felt dry. "Who has access?" "Only you, sir," Grace said softly. "Unless someone copied the admin codes." He looked down at his trembling hands. "Ethan." That name still burned like acid in his veins. Melissa turned from the window. "If he's watching us, he wants you afraid." Daniel shook his head slowly. "No. Ethan doesn't do fear. He does control." He pushed himself up, ignoring the pain. "I need my laptop." "Daniel..." Melissa tried to stop him, but his eyes were hard again, the same look he wore in boardrooms when entire fortunes were on the line. Grace handed him the hospital tray table with his laptop resting on it. The blue light reflected across his face as he logged in. "Every feed's live," he muttered. "Kitchen, kids' room, back patio." Melissa leaned closer. Pause. "What's that?" On screen, the camera in the backyard showed a figure standing just beyond the motion light's reach. Tall, still, watching the house. The feed flickered, then cut to black. Grace gasped. "He knows we're watching." Daniel's pulse hammered. "He's testing us." He slammed the laptop shut. "Get the kids, we're leaving Charleston tonight." Melissa blinked. "And go where?" "Someplace he can't reach." Grace's voice cracked. "He's not after you anymore. He's after proof." "What proof?" Daniel demanded. Grace hesitated, glancing toward the hallway where the kids were coloring quietly with a nurse. The night of the shooting, Ethan wasn't there by chance. Daniel stared at her. "What are you saying?" Grace took a deep breath. "I think Melissa called him." The room fell dead silent. Melissa's eyes flared. "That's a lie." Grace didn't blink. "Your phone log says different. I saw it before the police took it. 2 calls, both under 2 minutes, just hours before he showed up." Daniel looked at Melissa, his heartbeat pounding so hard it hurt. "Tell me she's wrong." Melissa's voice was barely a whisper. "I called him because you were losing control. You were installing cameras, accusing me, pushing everyone away. I thought he could talk sense into you. I didn't know he'd bring a gun." Daniel's shoulders sagged, but the betrayal cut deeper than the bullet. "Do you know what that call cost us?" he said quietly. "It cost Carter his sleep, Ellie her smile, me, my trust in anything." Melissa broke down, covering her face. "I was desperate, Daniel. I just wanted my husband back." Grace stepped between them. Enough. This isn't the time to fight. He's still out there. Daniel nodded slowly, forcing his anger down. You're right. And if Ethan thinks I'm afraid, he's wrong. He picked up the phone and dialed a number from memory. An old security contact from his investment firm. Brett, it's Reeves. I need a favor. Track a black SUV near Mercy General Hospital. Plates start with JZ7. Grace touched his arm. You sure you want to start this again? Daniel's eyes narrowed. It started the moment he touched my house. An hour later, Brett texted back. SUV registered to Reynolds Group Holdings, one of Ethan's shell companies. Location, hospital parking lot. Engine just started. Daniel stood, gripping his IV pole for balance. He's leaving. Melissa moved to the window. The SUV's taillights glowed red as it pulled onto the road. Where's he going? She whispered. Daniel's voice was steady. Home. Melissa turned. You're home? No, he said. Grace's. Grace froze. My apartment? Daniel nodded grimly. He's not after me or Melissa. He's after whatever you know. Grace's phone buzzed again. A text. No name, just 3 words. We're not finished. She turned pale. He found me. Daniel's jaw clenched. Then we finish it first. As they packed to leave the hospital, the camera feed on Daniel's laptop blinked back on one last time. For a brief moment, the screen showed Ethan's face. Calm. Smiling. Then he whispered into the camera, You think she's innocent, Daniel? Check your old footage the night Melissa was gone. The feed cut out again. Daniel stared at the blank screen. His reflection looked back, haunted, uncertain, afraid of what he might discover if he really did look. The drive to Grace's apartment was silent except for the wipers beating against the glass. The city lights of Charleston shimmered on wet asphalt, each passing block a reminder of how far from normal their lives had fallen. Grace sat in the back seat with the kids asleep beside her. Melissa rode up front, staring straight ahead, lost in her guilt. Daniel's hands gripped the wheel tight. His mind spun with questions he couldn't ask yet. When they reached the small complex, Grace led them upstairs to her unit. Inside, everything smelled of lavender and warm bread. A simple home, untouched by wealth. I don't see his car, Melissa whispered, peering through the blinds. He's not stupid, Daniel replied. If he came here, he left something. Grace knelt beside a small wooden chest near the couch. I keep my personal things here. Family photos, letters. Daniel crouched down beside her. You mind if I... She nodded. Go ahead. He opened the lid carefully. Inside were photos of Grace as a child in Nairobi, her parents smiling. Letters from her church in Charleston. And a flash drive tucked inside a small envelope marked for DR. Daniel frowned. Did you write this? Grace shook her head. No, I've never seen that envelope before. He slid the drive into his laptop. The screen flickered, then played a video, grainy black and white security footage from his own house. Timestamp. April 12th, 2:42 a.m., the night Melissa said she was out of town. The footage showed Grace walking into his study, turning on the desk lamp, and pulling out a hidden drawer he didn't even remember telling her about. Inside were stacks of papers, contract files, offshore accounts, old investment records. She flipped through them, took photos, then looked straight into the camera. Daniel, she said quietly in the video, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. You were never supposed to get hurt. The video ended. The room was silent. Melissa stepped back, shaking her head. You knew. All this time you knew something. Grace's eyes filled with tears. It's not what you think. Daniel's voice was low, steady, but wounded. Then what is it, Grace? Tell me before I lose the last bit of trust I have left. She swallowed hard. When I first came to work for you, I wasn't just a maid. I was an informant. Ethan hired me. Melissa gasped. You what? Grace held up her hands. He said you were laundering money through a fake charity. I thought I was helping stop corruption, but after a few months I realized Ethan wasn't collecting evidence. He was setting you up. Daniel stared at her. And you didn't tell me? I tried, she whispered. The night before the shooting. That's why I prayed outside the kids' room. I didn't know how to confess without putting them in danger. Daniel turned away, his face a storm of disbelief and heartbreak. So all this, every tear, every warning, was part of his game. No, Grace cried. It started as his plan, but I stayed because I saw the truth. You weren't the monster he said you were. Melissa looked from one to the other. So Ethan played all of us. Grace nodded. He wanted your company, your life, and your family, destroyed from the inside. Daniel paced, every step heavy. Then he's not finished. He still thinks he can win. Grace wiped her eyes. He won't. How do you know? Daniel asked. She reached into the chest again and pulled out another envelope. This one marked EC Confidential. Inside were printed screenshots of Ethan's encrypted messages. Because I've been recording him too, she said quietly. And this time, he won't see it coming. Before Daniel could respond, a sudden crash shook the hallway, glass breaking, boots hitting the floor. The kids woke screaming. Melissa shouted, "They found us!" Daniel grabbed the nearest thing, a lamp, as the apartment door burst open. Standing there in the doorway, drenched in rain and shadow, was Ethan Cole. And this time, he wasn't smiling. What if the truth you've been avoiding has been watching you the entire time? By the time Samuel returned from his business trip, the mansion was quieter than usual. The kind of silence that doesn't comfort. It warns. He entered the house expecting laughter, chaos, maybe the twins racing through the hallway. But all he saw was his wife, Madison, sitting on the couch, her face pale, eyes fixed on the floor. "Madison," he asked, his voice trembling just a little. "Where are the kids?" "They're asleep," she whispered. "You should sit down." He didn't. He stood there, still in his tailored suit, briefcase dangling from his hand, as Madison slid a small flash drive across the coffee table. "It's from the security system," she said. "You need to see this for yourself." Samuel's brows furrowed. "What is it?" "Just watch it." He plugged the drive into his laptop. The screen flickered to life, security footage from the living room camera. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then he saw it. His maid, Maria, in her uniform, standing close to his twins, smiling as she taught them something with gentle gestures. They laughed together, the kind of laughter that sounded pure, unfiltered. Samuel frowned. "I don't understand." "Keep watching," Madison said softly. The footage changed. Another day, another angle. Maria again, this time picking up one of the twins who had fallen. She checked his knee, kissed it softly, and whispered something inaudible. But her lips formed the words, "I'll always protect you." Samuel felt a strange chill. Why would she say that? Madison turned away. There's more. The final clip loaded. A late evening one. Maria was in the nursery, the twins asleep in their beds. She sat on the edge of one bed, tears rolling down her cheeks. Her voice trembled as she whispered to the air, "They don't deserve the pain I once lived through. I won't let anyone hurt them, not even their parents." Samuel's pulse quickened. What does she mean by that? Madison's eyes filled with guilt. You need to ask her. He stormed out of the room and went straight to the servants' quarters. The door was half open. Maria sat inside, clutching an old photo, a picture of a woman holding two babies. Samuel froze when he saw it. "Maria," he said softly, "where did you get that photo?" She looked up slowly, her eyes red but calm. "It's mine." Samuel's throat tightened. "Those babies, they look like—" "Yes," she interrupted, "like your twins." The air between them thickened. "Explain yourself," he demanded, his voice sharp. Maria rose, holding the photo close to her chest. "Before I was your maid, I was a mother, but I lost my babies to people who treated them like property. You hired me because I reminded you of someone, didn't you? Maybe you didn't know why. Maybe it was guilt, but I knew from the moment I saw your children, there was something more." "Stop speaking in riddles," he shouted. She looked him straight in the eye. "Because I believe one of your twins is my lost child." Samuel staggered backward, disbelief flooding him. "That's impossible," he said. "We adopted them legally." "Legally?" Maria whispered bitterly. "You should look closer at where those papers came from." Samuel's world began to tilt. The video, the affection, the strange familiarity. He thought he knew the truth about his family. But now, everything was cracking open. Madison appeared behind him, tears spilling over her cheeks. "Samuel," she whispered, "what if she's right?" He turned toward his wife, stunned. "You knew?" Madison's voice broke. "I didn't know, but I suspected something for a long time. Their blood type doesn't match ours. I tried to ignore it because I didn't want to lose them." The tension shattered the room like glass. Maria dropped the photo on the table and stepped back. "You want proof? Run a DNA test. But before you do, ask yourself if you're ready for what it might say." Her words lingered, cutting through the silence like a blade. That night, Samuel sat in his office, staring at the monitor, replaying the footage again and again. The more he watched, the less certain he became of everything he thought he knew. He didn't sleep. The truth had already begun to hunt him, and by sunrise he would learn that one lie had changed every life under his roof. By the next morning, Samuel couldn't take it anymore. He made the call, to a private lab, one that didn't ask questions. He collected samples quietly from the twins' toothbrushes, his own hair, and one of Madison's brushes. Maria didn't resist. She simply handed him a strand of her own hair without saying a word. "Whatever the result," she murmured, "I only want the truth." 3 days later, the results arrived. A small white envelope. Samuel sat alone in his study, staring at it for nearly an hour before opening it. The paper inside was brief, cold, clinical. But one line burned through his chest like fire. One of the twins is not biologically related to Mr. and Mrs. Coleman. However, there is a 99.8% maternal match with Maria Alvarez. The room seemed to shrink around him. His pulse thundered in his ears. He dropped the paper, stumbled back, and whispered, "God, no." Madison entered quietly. One look at his face told her everything. "It's true?" she asked. He nodded, trembling. "One of them belongs to her." Madison's knees gave way. She covered her mouth, sobbing into her hands. "What do we do now, Samuel?" He didn't answer, because there was no answer that didn't destroy someone. A knock on the door interrupted them. It was Maria. "Please," she said softly, "don't hide it from me." Samuel handed her the paper. Her hands shook as she read. When her eyes met his, they were filled with both grief and peace. "I knew it," she whispered. "I felt it every time I held him." Madison spoke through her tears. "Maria, you can't just take him away. He's our son, too." Maria's voice broke. "I never wanted to take him. I just wanted to know he was safe." But Samuel's world wasn't done unraveling. That evening, he received another call from his lawyer. "Mr. Coleman," the man said gravely, "the agency you adopted through, it's under investigation. There are accusations of illegal adoptions, forged documents. The authorities may contact you soon." Samuel's knees buckled. The ground beneath his life had given way completely. He turned to Maria and Madison, both women now broken by the truth in different ways. "We've all been living in a lie," he said quietly, "but we can't let it destroy the kids." Maria nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Then let's tell them together, the right way." That night, the 3 adults sat in the nursery, surrounded by the soft hum of the baby monitor and the rhythmic breathing of the sleeping twins. Samuel watched them closely. The little faces that had once been his entire world now felt both familiar and foreign. He whispered to Madison, "How do I love them the same, knowing this?" She placed a trembling hand on his. "You don't stop loving them, Samuel. You just learn to love them through the pain." But just as peace seemed near, a loud knock echoed through the mansion. 3 heavy strikes. Samuel stood, heart racing, and opened the door. On the other side stood 2 detectives. "Mr. Coleman," one of them said, holding up a badge, "we need to ask you a few questions about your adoption paperwork." Samuel froze, the color draining from his face. Madison's voice cracked behind him. "Samuel, what's happening?" And in that moment, with the law standing at his doorstep, Samuel realized the nightmare had only just begun. The police station smelled like cold metal and old coffee. Samuel sat on one side of the gray table, his fingers trembling against the surface. Across from him, Detective Harris flipped open a file, thick with documents and photos. "Mr. Coleman," the detective began, his tone calm but firm, "you're not under arrest yet. But we need you to tell us everything about how you adopted your twins." Samuel's mouth went dry. "I've told you. It was through Family Bridge Adoption Services." Harris gave a tight nod. "Yes, the same agency that's now being accused of child trafficking and falsifying parental histories. We've been interviewing several families. Most of them didn't know what they were involved in, but some did." Samuel looked up sharply. "You think I knew?" Harris leaned back. "That's what we're here to figure out." The detective slid a photo across the table. It showed a woman, the agency's founder, smiling in front of a luxury car. "Do you recognize her?" Samuel squinted. "No." Harris arched a brow. "Funny, because she used to work for your company, Coleman Enterprises. You fired her 5 years before your adoption. Care to explain how that's a coincidence?" The air in the room thickened. Samuel blinked rapidly, trying to recall. I remember her. She was in accounting. She was caught embezzling funds, and we pressed charges, but I had no idea she was running an adoption agency later." The detective's tone hardened. "Except her emails show she personally handled your case, and the money trail from your company to her agency lines up perfectly with the date of your adoption approval." Samuel's stomach dropped. "Are you saying she sold me a child?" "I'm saying," Harris replied, "you might have unknowingly bought one." The words hit like a hammer. Samuel buried his face in his hands. "Dear God." Harris sighed, lowering his voice. "Look, Mr. Coleman, I've seen men ruin their lives because of lies. If you truly didn't know, help us fix this. Tell me everything. Every call, every document, every transaction." Samuel nodded numbly. "I'll give you whatever you need." Outside the station, reporters were already circling. Cameras flashed, voices shouted, "Mr. Coleman, is it true one of your twins isn't yours?" He pushed through the chaos, face pale, lips pressed tight. Back home, Madison was pacing the living room. When he walked in, she ran to him. "What did they say?" He pulled her into an embrace. "It's worse than we thought. The agency was selling stolen babies. One of ours came from that ring." Madison gasped, her knees buckling. "You mean Maria's?" He nodded slowly. "Yes. One of the twins was taken from her." A heavy silence filled the room. The truth had finally turned from suspicion to fact. Maria appeared at the doorway, holding the DNA results. "So they know?" Samuel looked at her exhausted. "They're building a case. You'll probably be called in soon." Maria didn't move. Her face was unreadable, calm but broken beneath the surface. "All I ever wanted was to know the truth. Now that I do, I wish I didn't." She turned to leave, but Madison stopped her. "Maria, please, we need you. The kids need you." Maria paused, her voice trembling. "You don't understand. They'll take him from you. The court will see the papers, the DNA, and they'll give him back to me." Madison's voice cracked. "But he doesn't know you're his mother." Maria's eyes filled with tears. "That's what hurts most." Samuel stepped forward, desperate. "Then we fight. Together. You, me, Madison. We expose the agency, and we make sure both kids stay safe. Whatever it takes." Maria stared at him for a long moment, seeing sincerity, but also guilt. Finally, she whispered, "Then you'd better be ready to lose everything first." That night, as thunder rolled across the sky, Samuel stood at the nursery window watching his children sleep. Their innocence mocked the chaos tearing through the adults' lives. He whispered to himself, "How do I protect them from the truth I created?" And somewhere in the dark, a pair of headlights flashed through the rain. A car stopped outside the mansion. A figure stepped out, a woman in a gray coat, and pressed a folder against the door before driving away. Samuel found it minutes later. Inside were printed emails from his own company's server. Emails between the agency's founder and his assistant. And the last one read, "Delivery complete. The twins will arrive tomorrow. Make sure the paperwork is burned." Samuel's vision blurred. His assistant had set this all up, and now someone wanted to make sure he stayed quiet. But why? The answer was already closer than he thought. By sunrise, Samuel had one goal: find the person behind those emails. He barged into his office downtown before anyone else arrived. His assistant, Jordan, walked in moments later, surprised to see him. "Morning, sir. You're early." Samuel didn't respond. He tossed the folder onto the desk. "Explain this." Jordan froze. The color drained from his face. "Where did you get that?" "Doesn't matter," Samuel snapped. "You knew about the adoption deal. You helped cover it up." Jordan took a shaky breath. "Sir, you don't understand." "Then make me understand." Jordan's shoulders slumped. "It wasn't supposed to happen this way. I was just told to make sure your application went through fast. They said it was all legal, a private arrangement. I didn't know the kids were—" "Stolen?" Samuel cut in. "You didn't know you were helping steal a child?" Jordan's silence was answer enough. Samuel's voice dropped low. "Who paid you?" Jordan hesitated. Then he whispered, "Your father." Samuel froze. The air left his lungs. "What did you just say?" "Your father wanted heirs in the family line," Jordan said quickly. "He said your wife couldn't have children, and your image mattered to the company. He made me handle the paperwork quietly. He didn't care where the kids came from, only that they carried your last name." Samuel staggered back, stunned. His father, the man who built his empire, the man he'd always admired, had orchestrated this entire lie. "You're telling me my father bought children to protect his reputation?" Jordan swallowed hard. "Yes, and he warned me. If this ever came out, he'd ruin us both." Samuel turned away, gripping the edge of his desk, his knuckles white. For years, he'd lived under his father's shadow. Every business decision, every move dictated by the old man's obsession with power and legacy. But this crossed a line no amount of money could fix. He looked back at Jordan, fury burning in his eyes. "Get out, and pray I don't destroy you when this is over." That night, Samuel drove to his father's estate, a sprawling vineyard hours away. He didn't call ahead. He didn't knock. He stormed inside. The old man was sitting by the fire reading a newspaper. When he looked up, there wasn't surprise and only irritation. "You look like hell, son. What's this about?" Samuel slammed the folder down on the table. "You bought my children." His father didn't flinch. "Watch your tone." "Don't you dare tell me to calm down," Samuel roared. "You bought them, from a black market agency. Do you even understand what you did?" The old man sighed, setting down his drink. "I did what needed to be done. You were falling apart after Madison's miscarriages. The company needed stability. Heirs. I fixed it." Samuel's voice shook with rage. "You fixed it by stealing a woman's child." His father stood, face hard as stone. "You think the world cares where a child comes from? All they see is a family that looks complete. I built that image for you. For us." Samuel's eyes glistened. "You didn't build anything for me. You built a prison." The old man stepped closer. "If you expose this, you'll destroy everything. The company, your name, your kid's future." Samuel took a deep breath. "Then let it burn." The elder Coleman's expression turned cold. "If you do this, you'll regret it for the rest of your life." Samuel leaned forward. "I already do." He turned and walked out into the storm, his heart pounding, his world finally crumbling for good. But what he didn't see was his father picking up the phone. "Make sure that maid doesn't talk," the old man said grimly. "Do it tonight." Outside, lightning split the sky, and in the distance, Maria's life was about to be in danger. The rain hadn't stopped for hours. It beat against the windows of the small apartment where Maria lay awake, eyes fixed on the ceiling. Every shadow on the wall seemed alive. Every sound outside felt like a warning. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Maria," a deep voice said, "listen carefully. You need to leave your apartment right now." Her heart raced. "Who is this?" "It's Detective Harris. Someone's coming for you. We intercepted a message. A contract was placed on your name." Maria sat up, panic rising in her throat. "A contract?" Yes. Go out the back door. Take your child and head to the station. I'm sending a patrol car. But before he could finish, the line went dead. Her blood ran cold. Then came a sound. Tires screeching outside. Maria rushed to the nursery and scooped up her sleeping son. She grabbed her bag, keys, and phone. But as she reached the back door, she heard footsteps, heavy, deliberate, coming up the stairs. Someone kicked the door. Her heart stopped. Another kick. The hinges began to crack. Maria bolted through the back window, clutching her child. Rain soaked her face as she stumbled into the alley. Behind her, the door crashed open and voices shouted, male, angry, searching. Find her. The old man said no witnesses. Maria ran barefoot through puddles, every breath a knife in her chest. Her baby began to cry, and she whispered frantically, "Shh, baby, please not now." She turned a corner and ducked behind a dumpster, gasping for air. The men's voices grew closer. One of them lit a flashlight, sweeping it across the alley. "Nothing yet," one said. She couldn't have gone far. Maria clutched her son tighter, her pulse hammering in her ears. Her mind replayed everything, the lies, the adoption, the truth Samuel had uncovered. And now, someone was trying to erase her. Suddenly, a car engine roared from the other end of the alley, a black SUV pulling up fast. The men turned. "Is that Harris?" one shouted. But it wasn't the detective. It was Samuel. The SUV's headlights blazed through the rain as he leaned out the window. "Maria, get in!" She didn't hesitate. She sprinted toward the car, sliding into the back seat just as bullets cracked the air. Samuel hit the gas, tires screaming against wet asphalt. Maria covered her child, heart racing. "How did you know?" Samuel's jaw was tight. "I didn't. But when I left my father's house, I heard him make a call. I knew it was about you." Maria looked at him, rain dripping from her hair. "You risked your life to come here." He didn't look back. "You risked yours to tell me the truth. Now we're even." As they sped through the city, flashing lights appeared ahead. Police barricades. Samuel slowed, rolling down his window as Detective Harris approached. "You two all right?" the detective shouted over the rain. Maria nodded, shaken. Harris's face hardened. "We caught one of the men at your building," he confessed. "The hit was ordered by Richard Coleman, your father." Samuel's face went pale. "I can't believe he'd go that far," he whispered. Harris looked between them. "You're both in danger. Until we get enough evidence, he's still protected by his money. You'll need to go somewhere safe." "Safe?" Maria repeated softly. "There's no safe when men like him own the law." Samuel met her eyes in the rearview mirror. "Then we'll make the law see." But as the patrol cars escorted them out of the city, Samuel couldn't shake one thought. If his father could order someone's death that easily, what else was he capable of hiding? And then his phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "You chose the wrong side, son. Next time, I won't miss." Samuel stared at the screen, jaw tight. He knew this wasn't over. It was only beginning. The safe house was an old lake cabin outside Charleston, far from the chaos of the city. It smelled of pine and damp wood, but it was quiet. For now. Maria stood at the window, watching fog roll across the lake. The twins were asleep together on the couch, unaware of the storm that hung over their parents' heads. Samuel sat by the fireplace, staring into the flames. The message from his father still burned in his mind. Maria turned to him. "What are you thinking?" He didn't look up. "That I've spent my whole life trying to make him proud, and now the only way to protect my children is to destroy everything he built." Maria sat beside him. "Then do it." He finally met her eyes. "You don't understand. The company isn't just his legacy. It's thousands of employees, families, investors. If I bring him down, I bring them down too." Maria's voice trembled. "And if you don't, more innocent people get hurt. You saw what he did to me. You think he'll stop there?" Samuel looked at her, the firelight reflecting in her tear-streaked face. And something inside him hardened. He nodded slowly. "You're right." They began gathering every piece of evidence, emails, bank transfers, contracts, all tying Richard Coleman to the illegal adoption ring and the hit on Maria. Detective Harris had arranged for an internal leak to the media. At dawn, Samuel sent one final file, labeled Truth. Then he called his father. The old man's voice came through, cold and calm. "Son, I warned you." Samuel's tone was steady. "It's over. The FBI has everything. By morning, your name will be everywhere." A low chuckle came from the other end. "Do you really think I'll let that happen?" "Don't make this worse," Samuel said quietly. "You made it worse the moment you turned against me," his father snapped. "I gave you everything. The life you have, the company you run, those children you claim to love. Without me, you're nothing." Samuel's voice broke. "Without you, I'm finally free." He ended the call. Moments later, Maria turned on the television. Every channel was flashing the same headline: Coleman Enterprises CEO under investigation for child trafficking cover-up. Samuel exhaled, relief and fear mixing in his chest. Maria whispered, "You did it." But outside, a car engine rumbled, then another. Samuel looked through the window and froze. A convoy of black SUVs was pulling up the gravel path. Maria's voice shook. "Samuel? What is that?" He moved quickly, locking the doors. "My father's men. He's not letting us walk away." The headlights cut through the fog as men in suits stepped out, guns drawn. Samuel grabbed his phone. "Harris, they found us." "Hold tight," Harris shouted over the radio. "Backup's 5 minutes out." But 5 minutes felt like forever. Bullets shattered the windows. Maria screamed, shielding the twins. Samuel fired back from the doorway with the gun Harris had given him earlier. Glass rained down like shards of light. Maria crawled toward the kids, pulling them toward the back room. "Stay down, don't move." Samuel ducked behind the counter, heart pounding. One of the attackers kicked open the front door, shouting, "End this now!" A flash. A gunshot. The man fell, hit in the shoulder. Samuel turned. It was Maria, shaking, holding the gun with both hands. "I said stay away from my family," she screamed. They ran to the back exit, rain pouring as sirens echoed in the distance. Samuel loaded the kids into the car as police lights began flashing through the trees. The last thing he saw before they sped away was his father's car arriving, the old man stepping out, watching the cabin burn behind them. Their eyes met for a split second through the smoke and rain, a silent war between blood and conscience. Samuel whispered to himself, "It ends tonight." But even as they disappeared down the winding road, one truth remained. Ending the empire wouldn't end the scars it left behind, because some battles don't finish when justice comes. They just begin when the truth is out. There's a moment in every man's life when the truth doesn't just hurt. It breaks something deep inside. For Henry, that moment came at 2:47 a.m., sitting alone in his study, surrounded by flickering monitors. The house was silent except for the faint hum of the security system. His hands trembled as he replayed the footage again and again. The video was only 18 seconds long, but it felt endless. His twins were asleep in their room, peaceful, unaware, when someone crept in. The figure moved with caution, pausing, looking around. Then, she knelt beside the kids' beds. It was Maria. Henry's heart sank. She wasn't doing anything violent or cruel. She was crying, whispering something under her breath he couldn't hear. It wasn't what she said that terrified him. It was how she said it. With pain, with love, with guilt. Why would she cry over his kids like they were her own? Henry sat there frozen, eyes locked on the screen, the world around him falling silent. The clock ticked, mocking him. Then came the twist, a whisper in Spanish, barely audible through the static. "I'm so sorry, mis hijos." "My children." Henry's body went cold. He hit rewind, listening again, this time through tears. He didn't want to believe it, but there it was. Truth hidden in plain sight. He pulled up older footage, one from 2 months ago, another from Christmas morning, another from the night his wife, Lauren, had fired their old nanny unexpectedly. Each video revealed something new. Maria sneaking into the kids' room late at night, tucking them in, singing softly. Not as an employee, but as a mother. That night, Henry didn't sleep. His mind spun through every moment, every smile, Every laugh from his children that suddenly made too much sense. The way they called her Mimi. The way they clung to her at drop-off. The way she looked at them when she thought no one was watching. He felt betrayed, but not by Maria. By Lauren. The next morning, Henry confronted his wife at breakfast. Lauren sat across from him, sipping coffee like nothing had changed. "I saw the footage," Henry said. She froze, cup halfway to her lips. "What footage?" "You know which one." Her eyes narrowed, calculating. "Henry, whatever you think you saw." "I saw her," he cut her off. "Maria, in their room, crying, calling them her children. Lauren, what have you done?" The silence that followed was unbearable. Then Lauren set the cup down gently, leaned back, and said in a voice so cold it sliced through the air, "You weren't supposed to find out." Henry's heart cracked. "Find out what?" "That they're not yours." The room went dead quiet. He stared at her, mouth open, unable to process the words. Lauren looked at him like a woman who had already made peace with the damage. "You were never supposed to know. But now that you do..." She stood up. "Maybe it's better this way." Henry's voice broke. "What did you do, Lauren?" She turned away, her shoulders tense. "I did what I had to. You couldn't give me what I wanted, Henry. So I found someone who could." His world collapsed in a single breath. Lauren walked out, leaving Henry with his shattered reality, his trembling hands, and a house full of cameras that had finally told the truth. But what she didn't know, what no one knew, was that the footage had captured more than just Maria's heartbreak. It had captured something in the shadows behind her. Someone else was watching them too. And this time, it wasn't Henry. Henry didn't remember falling asleep, only waking up to chaos. Police cars, blue lights flashing across the front yard, neighbors gathered, whispering. He rushed downstairs, still in his robe, and found Maria handcuffed on the porch. The twins were crying, clinging to her legs. "What the hell is going on?" Henry shouted. One of the officers stepped forward. "Sir, we received an anonymous call. The maid was caught trying to flee the house with your children." "That's a lie," Maria screamed through tears. "They were scared she was coming to take them away." Henry turned to the officer. "Who called?" "Didn't say, just said a kidnapping was happening at this address." And that's when it hit him. Lauren. He ran back inside, storming to his study, and checked the live feed. The cameras were down. All of them. Except one. The hidden one in the nursery. He hit play. The video showed Maria packing the kids' clothes. But she wasn't alone. A man stood beside her. A man Henry didn't recognize. He wasn't touching her, but his presence was sharp. Dangerous. He looked at the camera once, directly into it, and whispered something. Henry froze the frame and zoomed in. The man's face was partly hidden, but there was a mark, a small tattoo on his neck. The same tattoo Henry had seen in the background of a photo Lauren once tried to delete from her phone. This wasn't random, this was a setup. He raced outside, yelling, "Stop! She's not kidnapping them, she's protecting them." But the police didn't listen. Maria was pushed into the car, screaming Henry's name, begging him to believe her. The twins cried louder. Henry's voice broke. "She's innocent." The cops drove away, leaving him standing there, watching everything slip away. Hours later, after the chaos cleared, Henry sat in his study again. Same chair, same screens. Only now, he was the one under surveillance. His phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "You shouldn't have looked at the footage, Henry." His blood ran cold. He checked the cameras again, but this time he wasn't watching. Someone else was. The monitors flickered one by one until every screen showed the same image. A live feed of him, sitting in the chair, staring back at himself. Then, a whisper echoed from the speakers. Soft, mocking, familiar. Lauren's voice. "Now you know how it feels to be watched." Henry's jaw tightened as the screens glitched, showing one last frame before they went dark. Maria in a police cell, holding a crayon drawing from the twins. Above their stick figures, written in shaky handwriting, were the words, "We miss you, Mom." The camera clicked off. The house went silent. And for the first time, Henry realized the truth. The cameras he installed to control his world had turned into the very thing that destroyed it. If this story made your heart race, don't scroll. Hit subscribe and join thousands who uncover the truth behind America's deepest secrets, only here on Top Core.